it's Peter Chapman from SKUFood, and I'd like to welcome you to another version of our SKUFood Recipes for Success, which are presented by FCC. And it's our privilege to bring these sessions to you and share some insights and really help your food business take things to the next level. And we started these sessions back in March when the whole COVID-19 pandemic started to really impact the food industry in Canada. And it was our way to try to give back and help producers and processors so that they could really adapt to operating in a new world. And that's what SKUFood is really all about. It's an online community where producers and processors and other people in the food industry can come together and share their knowledge of what's going on. And we like to try to provide a lot of tools and things to help you. And my name is Peter Chapman, and I use my background in the food industry, which started at a store and included about 20 years with Loblaw companies, and really try to help you figure out how to get your products on the shelf and into the shopping cart. And this month we've been doing a series about telling your story, and I'm so excited today that we have Carly Minish-Wytinck here with us from Smak Dab. And Carly, you should be there, so hopefully you can, if you can turn on your camera, and there you are. Great, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here with us. And I need to put these in. There we go. Now I can hear you.
Perfect.
So welcome. And I met Carly a number of years ago. I was in Winnipeg doing some work for Food and Beverage Manitoba, and she was at one of the sessions I was doing. And it's been really awesome to see her Smak Dab mustard business grow from being a local processor in Manitoba to across Western Canada. And I'll let her tell you more about the exciting things in her business. But it's great to have you here with us, Carly. And thanks for taking the time to join us in the morning in Winnipeg, right?
Well, it's noon. It's noon here, so we're good. We're good.
Noon? Okay. And I can tell you that Carly's journey towards working towards getting her Red Seal certification, she recognized that, mustard, the versatility and the significance of how mustard could help in the kitchen as one of those sort of special spoonful of mustard makes the difference in the flavor and overall composition of a dish. And so with using her skills and talents as a trained chef, she's carved her own entrepreneurial and culinary path, filling that gap in the local food market and all across Western Canada now, not just local food market, for high quality mustard that people of all cooking levels can easily dabble with. So it's a great story, and I'm sure if people in Western Canada are familiar with your product, and hopefully soon in Eastern Canada as well, right?
Yes, correct. Yes.
So our recipes for success, they're designed to be interactive. So I always would encourage people, if you've got some questions or comments, just type them into the chat. We will be recording the session, which will send a link to anybody who's registered. And also we archive them for our SKUFood members so that they can access them at any time. And one of the exciting things about, there have been so many things that have happened. And before we came on today, Carly and I were talking about how this whole pandemic has changed the industry and so many different industries. And one of the things that's happened with that and SKUFood is the opportunity to partner with FCC on our recipes for success. And that's something that has evolved since the whole pandemic in March. And it's really exciting to partner with FCC. And for those of you who don't know, FCC is the only Canadian lender that's 100% invested in Canadian agriculture and food. And I'm sure many people recognize them from the agriculture side, but they really are working throughout the entire value chain in food now. And so they support large global exporters and small artisanal producers. So really from one end of the spectrum to the other. And they also include financing options such as assistance for cash flow, equipment, inventory financing, expansion and construction, real property startup, and diversification. So there are lots of different options for people to work with FCC. And actually, I was talking to a client the other day and recommended that they call because it was a project they were working on, which might be a good fit. So it's exciting for me to partner with FCC on our recipes for success. So Carly, one thing I want to do before we get into talking about all the great things that you're doing to tell your story is I just thought I'd take a little snapshot of our audience here. And I just want to see how many of them are into gourmet mustard. All right, so we'll see how big the market size is for you. So if people on there could just tell us whether they've got any gourmet mustard in their fridge. And I gave you some different options. Yes, you have it. No, but it sounds good. I don't know about these people, the ones who like the basic yellow mustard. And then we've got a category for people who are not mustard fans. So
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. That's a high yes so far. Well, sorry, maybe I'm not supposed to say that.
oh yeah, you could say it. Sure, it is. Looks
Yeah.
like there's a lot of potential for you on this call with our participants.
We have some mustard fans in the crowd, which is very exciting.
We do. So I'll
Yeah.
just put it up there so people can see it. But like you said, we've got 2/3 of our participants today have gourmet mustard in their fridge. So I think that's good. And only 1 out of 10 is not a fan. And the rest of them you can convert to the gourmet mustard. All right.
For sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So so just a little fun to get started. But why don't you tell us a bit about Smak Dab? I talked about it a little bit, and I've got a picture of it here on my screen. That's over at our cottage in Prince Edward Island where we had a couple of bottles. But why don't you tell us a bit about Smak Dab and where things are going?
Yeah, so you gave a little introduction, but yeah, I am a red seal chef. I'm based in Manitoba. I went to culinary school, and when I came back from culinary school, I guess what I was really noticing was when I was working in the professional kitchen, how my chef was using mustard in such a versatile way, in a way that I hadn't ever imagined in my whole professional chef career. So salad dressings, marinades, sauces, and when I was working as a chef, I always used to get people asking me, how do I get food to taste good? I'm busy. I don't know how. I'm lost. I think this was before Pinterest, or maybe Pinterest was just kind of coming into the world where, you could search for, all sorts of recipes. And so people just used to ask me for my input, what do I put on my chicken to not make it so dry? Or how do I add flavor? Basically, how do I add flavor to food was the question. So, and I was like, in the kitchen, we use mustard and this, and like, oh, that's cool. So I kind of started clicking in that, hey, maybe there's a market here. Mustard is, I did a lot of research. So mustard is Canadian. The seeds come from the prairies. There's so many different flavor combinations you can use. And the major thing that I was finding was a lot of the mustards on the shelf were really highly processed. They could be really bitter. They weren't really flavorful on their own that you could use as an ingredient and a condiment. So the quality wasn't high enough where you could dip your sausage into it, in addition to adding it to your salad dressing. It was just like, it was one or the other. It just couldn't do both. It was too strong. So I kind of wanted to make a product that could do both. That could be a condiment that's really pleasant on its own, or that can be used in a recipe. So I started playing around with some recipes in my little kitchen about 6 years ago. And then I just kind of went to market with it. I went to a few farmers markets, which was a wonderful way for any food company to start. I started giving samples, getting really great feedback. I started collecting a lot of data on, what people liked, what they didn't like. And I started to really realize that people liked grainy mustards, that there's so many smooth mustards on the shelf that people were kind of looking for something different. So I kind of honed in on that. And that's what makes us unique, is that we are more of a grainier, kind of a whole grain variety. And so few months later, after launching, we got a couple of SKUs into stores. Kind of fast forward, more and more SKUs, and then now 6 years later, we're in Sobeys and Safeway stores in Manitoba, Alberta, and also BC. We're not in Saskatchewan yet, but we're in a distributor, finding a distributor. But basically, we're very much in Western Canada, and we're very excited about our expansion, and we're kind of growing from there. So yeah.
Awesome. So so you started out with the farmers market model, and I think that's probably when I met you, was when you were just transitioning to the store side of things.
Was. Yes, correct. That is right, Peter. Yeah.
And then in the last 2 or 3 years, it's really been moving into that BC market, which was a big shift for you, right? And
absolutely. Yeah.
How'd you make the decision about BC?
Well, you know what? I think it was a matter of, we just kind of we thought about the market that was right for us. And when we thought about, our kind of thinking about our target market, the people that tend to gravitate towards our product, the BC market was a market that we really felt like we fit in, and we really felt at home. So it worked out with distribution. We were able to find a really great fit. We went out there and you and I worked on that, gave a presentation. It was a great fit with them too. It's kind of where our target market fit. They actually had a gap in their market for a locally made product. So we really fit in perfectly. So that was kind of how that worked. And then Alberta kind of grew from there. The East hasn't happened as quickly because there is more competition in the East. So we've just been more focusing on where we really fit in, which is the West. And so we've just been really putting our energy towards that in that market.
Great. Okay. And as you've grown, would you say that from how you started talking, and I want to talk about customers first. So I want to talk about the Sobeys and the distributor first, and we will get to consumers because I know everybody likes to talk about consumers, but I want to talk customers first. Maybe that's my retail background. I have to talk about that first.
Yeah.
But would you say that, you know, how you've told your story to your customers has evolved over the last few years? Like, how do you see that changing?
Yeah, you know, I think that when you're first getting going in the food world, you don't really have much of you're just trying to get your product on the shelf. You don't really know how to do it, and you're just trying to get it on the shelf, and you have the local advantage. But when you're looking at distribution outside the province, your story has to really be really not intense, but it has to be really evolved, and it has to be really prominent. You have to have a really great story. You have to have a really great value proposition for them. So at first, I don't think I had a value proposition. I was just, you know, a gourmet mustard made here, and that's what I was going with. But in BC, that doesn't swing. In Alberta, that doesn't swing. You have to offer more. So I think that, you know, the big question was, what's going to make you different? And so you have to, you know, tell them how you're going to enhance the category. What are you going to fill the gap of what they're missing? And it's all those things that you want to reiterate to your customers that's really important. And I think you made a really good point about talking about the customer versus the consumer. And I think early on, my story has evolved because I didn't really put much stock in the customer. I always wanted to put stock in the consumer. And if there's anything I stress to people now that are just getting into the business, put like 75% of your energy into the customer and then 25% to the consumer, because the customers are really the people you need to make. I wouldn't say that you know, that percentage is accurate, but maybe it is, because it just goes to show that you want to put a lot of energy into the stores, into your distributors, because ultimately they are your consumer as well. If they understand your product, they can represent you better, they can push it better, they can get you that end cap in the store that maybe you wouldn't get if you didn't spend that extra time with them, sitting down with them, taking them for coffee and explaining them your product and the advantages and the benefits and all that stuff. And I think people miss that, and they don't take time to spend on the customer. They skip them and think, oh, they'll do their job. But really, they need to know you. They need to understand what you're going to do for them. And that relationship is so important when building your sales and building your business, because ultimately they're going to buy your product as well. And I've really learned over time that, you know, putting a lot of energy into your customer is so important, and making sure they're happy and their needs are met at all times.
You know, I mean, it really kind of almost warms my heart to hear you say grow the category. So maybe just share a little bit. And if say I was, say, Sobeys or Thrifty Foods or something like that, how would you say to me, Peter, this is how we're going to grow the category?
Yeah, so it's one of the reasons why we kind of got into mustards, is that we were noticing that the category was really tired. It was a very traditional, old school category. You know, we see the mustards, you know, the French's will always be there, and the French's is a traditional, it's just a standard. And then there's other brands that have just been around forever that are really, you know, just tired, and people weren't buying from the category. It was kind of I'll say the word, it was a category that wasn't generating increased sales year after year. It was flatlined. So Smak Dab, we wanted to come and we wanted to turn that category on its head. We wanted to add an upscale option for people that maybe were buying from the category, that were just buying from the category to keep doing it because they needed a mustard, but oh, here's a really cool mustard that can do so much more for me, or my kids will actually eat it. Or we have a lot of customers that don't like mustard, but they like our mustard. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunity, and that was our big value proposition, that we said, hey, the mustard category is super traditional. It can be stale. There's not a lot going on. It's not as exciting and as new, but hey, we're going to freshen it up. We're going to add a new option for people to buy from, or people that haven't bought from it before to kind of try something new.
And so so are they receptive to that story when you tell them that, what do you see in the body language and when you talk to them?
They're receptive, but then you have to like do it. You know,
Yeah,
they're
that's
they're
right.
they're excited about it and they say, "Oh yeah, you know, you're not wrong." But then like we'll give you the opportunity to like prove it to us. So and then that's when you need to kind of put pen to paper and do your job at that point. You know, I often tell people that, you know, the easy part is actually getting into the store. It's getting it into people's shopping carts that can be really challenging because, you know, there's so many different SKUs in the store that you are competing with. So you need to get, you know, you need to get your name on their shopping list. So, and then that all comes from, you know, there's so much things that stem from that. You know, your marketing, your social media, that we'll obviously talk about, but is, you know, it's cool to say that, you know, you can promise all those things to the stores that you're going to do this, you're going to enhance the category, but you know, if you fall short on your end or if your distributor falls short, there's a lot of people in between, then they'll lose faith in you. So that's why, again, that relationship is important to have from the beginning. There's communication. So yeah, I mean, it's cool to promise something, but you have to live up to it for sure.
Right, right. And the way that you would tell that story to your customers, I would say would you say it's different than how you talk to your consumers, like we're going to see on some of your social media?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same in some ways, and then it's different. You know, when you're talking to a store, you're talking about, you know, you're going to grow profitability, or you know, you're going to grow. You want to talk a little more numbers, and you know, there are some similarities because you know, like I said, your customers are going to be your consumers as well. So there's a lot of similarities, but I mean, in terms of dollar amount, you know, dollars and percentages and promos and stuff, that's going to be different. But you know, the community and your brand should live throughout all your communications with all your customers and consumers. So there can be some similarities, but there's a lot of differences as well.
Right, right. Okay. So I'm just going to ask people right now, because I know that we'll talk about consumers now because we probably got more to talk about there. But if people have any questions right now for Carly, just about how she talked to whether it was distributors or her customers about her products and some of the things that she's been referring to here. If you've got any questions, by all means, put them into the Q&A there at the bottom, and we can take a look at them, because it is so important that you tell that story about your products in a language that the person on the other side of the desk is going to relate to. And I agree, it's got to include sales. And hopefully when you're talking to them, you're agreeing on sales targets, like you're saying, we believe it'll do this much, and this is how we've seen it grow the category, that kind of thing. So hopefully those are the kind of conversations that you're able to have with those people.
Yeah.
So I see there is one question there. So let me just take a look here. Oh yeah, how did you get the meeting with the category manager?
So to be honest, we haven't met with, you know, it's more through our distributors. So we have more meetings with our distributors. So because we have a distributor as that middleman, it kind of has to always go between them. So often it comes from a good distributor, getting that meeting, and then sometimes they loop you in, sometimes they don't. It can be hard if you don't live locally, but it depends whether you're working with a distributor or not. We've always worked with distributors. We've just found for our business it works for us. And that's kind of how it works, is the distributor who's already in the store, who, you know, hopefully if they're a good distributor, they have the connections, they do a good job. And those meetings with, especially with a new exciting product, if you're doing your job to the distributor, you know, them carrying on that message to the category manager should be an easy, well, not always easy, but it should be a seamless process. So for us, it's always gone through the distributor. Hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, and I would say though, in the initial days in Winnipeg with Sobeys, you got meetings with Sobeys as being part of their local program, right?
Yeah. Yes, correct. And yeah, their local program, they kind of reached out to a lot of different companies, and it was just like a day of presentations that they had a bunch of companies come in. So that's kind of how that went.
And I think one of the points that Carly made, which I think is a really important one for people, is when she did explore going into a new market like BC, where she had to find a new distributor. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know you did a lot of work to find the right distributor that would have the relationships with the right stores, right?
And yeah, because you and I went over that lots. You and I helped build that. And I think that, I'll be honest, I've worked with distributors before and it doesn't work out and you don't get anywhere. They ship, I've had some heartbreaking, situations where you ship out product, it doesn't move and they ship it back to you. So, it happens sometimes where your values and maybe what their strongest suits aren't a fit for you, and that's okay. And I always tell people, if that happens to you, like, don't worry about it. It's probably a good thing that it didn't work out because it gives you an opportunity to move on. So our distributor in BC, we were very grateful. We talked to quite a few that we, had meetings with, and we sat down and we talked about this and that. And, obviously we shared our story and shared our values and who we are and what we do, all that stuff. And it just wasn't a good fit. And we ended up choosing the distributor with now that's a perfect fit. So fortunately, we were in the position to make a choice who we could work with. But I think if you have a great product and you have a great, your good value proposition, you have all your ducks in a row, you will have the options because they'll want to work with you. So it all comes back to really having, all your ducks in a row and really knowing what you're offering. But yeah,
okay,
finding a good distributor is important.
Right. All right. The questions are coming now, fast and furious.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'm going to go back to a few more.
I'm ready.
So yeah, they're tougher than my question. So at what point did you have to submit to lab testing, add nutritional data, etc.? Where did you find regulations for your labeling?
Okay, so our product being mustard is very low risk. So this is going to get very specific for everyone listening, but we have a below 4 pH, so very low risk product. So we've always been very fortunate to fly under the radar of a lot of, we have a CFIA license, we have all the certifications, but because we are so low risk, we've been very fortunate that way. We submitted some product. If you need a place to submit product for testing, let me know. I can give you a contact. There's a place outside of Winnipeg here that does a really great job of lab testing. So we did that microbial testing for shelf life, and it was all good to go. So and then that didn't really affect our labeling at all. It just more dictated our best before date, which was kind of easy so we have a 16-month shelf life. It's very long because of the low pH. So if you, I'll maybe give my email to people. If you need a contact for that place for lab testing, I can provide it for you.
Okay, and maybe the easiest way, Carly, is to just put it right in the chat, or Susan, who works with us here, could we just put it right in the chat because she has your email. So we'll share all your contact information.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Then if people want to order mustard, they can do that too, right?
That's good too, yeah. We ship Canada-wide.
All right. So the next question from Lee is, I can see your story developing before my eyes because it's new, you're a chef, and it's your idea. You are the story. But what he's asking is, what advice do you have for developing a story for an older company with a legacy product and hundreds of employees?
Oh my gosh, if you have a legacy product, you have the greatest opportunity for a story. I think if you have, generations of family, I think playing on that is going to be like gold. I personally love stories like that. I look for them, to be honest. I'm the kind of person that researches products before I buy them and looks for cool stories like that. So I don't know, what's your product? Can you tell us what your product is?
It'd be in the dairy category.
Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. I'm trying to ignore it.
It's more orders coming in from BC.
Oh, yeah.
So he's asking, his product would be in the dairy category, so cheese and
amazing
milk, ice cream, that kind of thing.
So I think playing on that legacy and that generational aspect is just so important, and people want to see that. I have so many ideas in my mind right now you could do for marketing. You could have such a cool, you could do so much. You could share stories of, how your great grandfather started the company, or how he, I don't know, I'm just throwing out ideas, but I think that a story like that is gold, like absolute gold.
And I would say that in some businesses where it's not just tied to a person, then it has to evolve to a little bit more of the product, because and one of the things that I would say about your business is that the mustard stands on itself. And I agree with when, Lisa, you are the story, but I would also say, and maybe when we get into sharing some of your consumer messages, that a lot of it is about the product and how the product solves a problem for the consumer. It's not that you know, although you've developed them and you use your ability to help people use them, but it's not you, it's really the product that's doing it for them. And so I think we can, when we look at the consumers, we can explore that a bit. So there's another question here that says, how were you able to find the information about your sales category? You had mentioned the category of sales at the retailer, but how did you find the info about how the mustard category was doing at the retail level?
Ooh, okay, so that's a good point. I did some research. There's a Canadian grocer magazine that came out. I think it was last year's edition, and they gave some data. And they give data pretty much every year. I think you just have to do a little bit of digging. This was a year ago that I did that. But if you do a little bit of digging, I think it's the Canadian Grocer is what it's called. They give you some data, and they give you some also some projections of the categories. And so actually one of them did show that the condiment category is actually growing. And that was all the condiments lumped together. So there is opportunity for growth. But the Canadian Grocer is a good resource. You know what, I have to think of where else I looked. I know there was, this was over a year ago, but I know Canadian Grocer had some really good data, and I think they had all the different categories.
I think that, you know, my recommendation, and I don't get sponsored, maybe I should be, but I'm not. I would say that anybody who's a producer or processor in our food industry really should be looking at Canadian Grocer and Grocery Business, which are the two Canadian magazines that come out. And as Carly said, they do publish sometimes like annual reviews of categories where you can get information. And then the other thing that I really would encourage people to explore is to try to look at Nielsen front-end sales information. And sometimes you can access that through industry associations, and you don't need the full meal deal to understand just some basic numbers. And then the other thing, which if you were to ask me that question, I would say ask the retailers. There's nothing wrong with saying, is the mustard category growing? And they're going to go, oh no, we can't seem to get any growth. We keep investing and we're not getting it. You go, oh, well, I have a solution for you. I've got some incremental sales to bring to your category. So talk to your customers about it too.
I believe that is what I did as well. I think I talked to a couple stores, again, because I had a good relationship with them. I could ask those questions. And she said, yeah, no, it doesn't really grow very much. And that's when it was kind of, then that became part of my, you know, my spiel, so to speak. But yeah, Canadian Grocer, and then honestly, communication with your stores. I think they would definitely share that with you if you have a good relationship with them.
That's right. Yep. And there was just one more question about how do you deal with shelf life issues? But you did say that you did go through the work up front to get it tested, which people should have access to. And 16 months is a great number. You know, I will say that we are very fortunate that we do have a long shelf life. We've only had one instance where the product didn't sell and we just swapped it out. So I unfortunately can't give much advice on that. It is a tough one though. That's kind of why I did do mustards, because I knew it had a long shelf life, because it's a tough, you know, issue to deal with. But yeah, shelf life is, it's tough. And it is something that when you're talking to your customers, especially, that's an important part of the story that you have to tell. And for a retailer, taking a risk on a product that has 16 months is much less than taking the risk on something that's got 6 months, for example. So it was an advantage that you had for sure.
Absolutely, for sure.
So. And there's one other question from Karen about how do you find distributors in other provinces? And we did kind of talk about that in terms of some of the work that you did going exploring options. And
so it starts with going to trade shows. You have to invest a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money into trade shows. We went to the CL Canada in Toronto, I believe it was, or no, it was Montreal 2 years ago. I didn't go to Toronto last year. And then the Grocery Specialty Food West in Vancouver. And I had gone to many trade shows before that. And, you know, it doesn't happen right away. I often find that distributors check you out. Like they get your card, they walk away, they hear your story, and they just like want to see what happens to you. So I know, fortunately the one in BC happened more quickly, but I have heard a lot of stories of my peers saying that distributors, they'll wait on you for a couple years to make sure you're still around and to make sure you're thriving, and then they'll want you. So it can be a game of patience, but I would say trade shows are a great place to start. How I discovered my distributor, I was actually out checking out stores, and I just was watching what trucks were coming in, and I was like taking pictures of the trucks, and I was like, okay. And actually that's kind of how I found Lecker, who was my distributor. And then then we met at a trade show later, but it's kind of how you recognize who's out there, who's delivering to the stores you want to go to. That's a little bit more labor intensive, but you always have to be aware of everything around you, what's going on in the industry. So trade shows, and then just visiting stores, even just asking the stores, like, who do you deal with? We want to, we'd love to get into your store, but who do you deal with? And that's a great way. So there's a lot of different ways, but be patient. I will say it can be a game of patience sometimes.
And I agree with you. Talking to the people in the stores is a great way to find out about good distributors and bad distributors too. So
that's a great point, because sometimes you don't know who's a good and bad one when you just see them at trade shows, but when you talk to stores, that's when you get the lowdown. And I would caution in asking other businesses who they deal with, because that's privy to them. Like that's some people can share. Like I share my distributor, but sometimes I don't, because I feel like that's information that you've worked hard to get, and you kind of have to put in your time and working for it. So just go to the stores, and and what might be a good fit for me might not be a good fit for somebody else. It's very situational. So yeah, go to the stores and ask around.
Okay, and then one comment from Crystal, I'll just read it because I think it's a great comment in the chat, and really kind of references the question that Lee asked, is just the story of how each generation has grown in the business in terms of processes, like lessons learned, but what has stayed the same in terms of values. And I think that does resonate with people when you can get that message across. And even more so in the last 5 months, I think.
Yes, absolutely. And I think getting back to that business that was referenced, the legacy, I think that, talking about your values that you had in the beginning till now, I think there's so much you can do in terms of marketing and just totally blow it out of the water. I think that's such a cool legacy. I think that is so special, and not a lot of businesses have that. So I don't know. I feel like I want to talk to this person after and hear about it, because I'm really excited about the opportunity with that, with like marketing and and even I'll say one more thing. I know we probably have to move on, but I think people sometimes think that when they have a lot of employees, it's a disadvantage to their story, but I completely disagree. I think that you could focus on your employees and say, do a little story about them. Maybe they moved to Canada from who knows where, and they have a passion for, I don't know, there's so many cool directions you can go in showcasing the people that work for you as part of your family. And I think that having a lot of employees isn't necessarily a disadvantage. I think it can be an advantage to bolster, your values and your diversity and what you stand for. So I think it's cool.
Great. Yeah. And I know we're going to see one of your employees coming up in some of your posts. So
yes, exactly.
So let's talk about consumers. And, I watch what you're doing, and I see all kinds of great stuff. So I applaud you for what you're doing. And I love the dish. So tell us where that came from. Where did you get that idea?
So the dish is the name of our blog, and it really just came from, I always like to tell people, when you're on social media, when you have a website, you always want to, I think the abbreviation people use is APV, always provide value, like always. Don't sell. Don't ever, I think the percentage of posts or marketing that you want to sell versus providing value is like 10% selling to like 90% value. Like customers now are too in tune with people that are being too salesy. They'll run away. So you really just want to provide value to people, and it builds trust with them, and trust will turn them into being a customer in the long run. It might take a while, but ultimately value is so important. So, the dish was all about me as a chef just providing value to our followers. So, whether it's, during quarantine, it was like, cooking for comfort. So, cooking meals that provide a lot of comfort. So I had some bread in there, everyone was making bread, and, long stewed dishes, kind of things like that. It's
just
all
with a little mustard in them though, right?
What's that?
Just with a little mustard in them.
Just a little mustard, exactly. So it's not like I'm going to sell a ton of mustard off that, you know, people reading that recipe. It's just that I'm providing something. I'm giving something to you because I want to. And that's really the idea of our blog. And if you can have a blog on your website, it's a great way to provide value to your customers. You know, maybe talking about the health products of a product, or, you know, maybe even just talking about a trip you went on to, you know, explore this ingredient or whatever. Things like that customers really love to read because it just gives a little bit of story, again, building your community, and it just provides value. Providing value is just so important. It helps build trust, and that is ultimately the most important.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you are developing the content for the blog or for some of the other things that you're doing, do you have that target market in mind when you're working on the piece?
Yeah, so, you know, yeah, we kind of try and focus at the people that are wanting to cook at home and enjoy entertaining, but it can range from people that have young kids or have kids at home to people that are retired and don't have kids at home. So you have to kind of make it broad but also specific at the same time, if that makes sense. So yeah, so you want to kind of focus on what's your target market doing. Like, for example, our target market in March were at home with their kids, so we put a blog out about what to cook at home with your kids, and it was around Easter time, so, you know, having a little bit more of an Easter theme. So I think it's definitely important to hone in on your target market when you understand that, and target it to them, but don't be too specific that it rules out, you know, people that are maybe a little bit deviating from your target market. But yeah, just hone in on what you think that they're, you know, and also playing to like read the room, what's going on, like quarantining. Okay, well, you know, people aren't eating out, so maybe providing a guide to restaurants to eat at in your city right now is not appropriate, you know, things like that. So yeah, it's definitely a way to provide value to people that are already listening to what you're saying.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And you have some examples that you shared, so I'm going to put them up, and if you want to talk about some of them, I can do that now if you want.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
And there we go. There's the first one.
Okay, yeah. So I'll just talk quickly about social media. I could talk a long time about social media, but I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. But, you know, hopefully everyone listening has a social media page of some sort. And it's really important to add in a human element. So, you know, whether it's yourself, so this is me, obviously. We got an award in the spring of this year, which we were very honored at. So we posted it, and people love to see the people behind the brand. They love to see you smiling. They love to see you, you know, they love to see you achieving, really. So that was something we wanted to share with our fans, and obviously also, you know, thank them for the support that got us there. So it's a really great way to engage with your followers and show them like, hey, we appreciate you because look at where it's got us. So I will say that if you have a social media page, human element, whether it's you, an employee, somebody else that works at your company, or even just somebody engaging in your product, is really important. You're guaranteed to get more interaction with customers, and not customers, sorry, more interaction with followers, more likes, more comments. It's just like something that is very important. And
you would tag Sobeys in that one too?
I did, yes.
And did they do anything with it?
No, they didn't. They
didn't. Really?
No, they didn't. But I tagged them in a lot of stuff, and they don't really do much. So I think they're just too big for that. I don't know.
We'll have to get them.
Keep tagging.
We'll have to get them on that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'll go on to the next one then.
Okay, yes, this is a very special one. So talking about the legacy here. So my grandfather, who just turned 89, works in the business. He's kind of slowly retiring from working in the business, but he works for Smak Dab. So I share a lot about him because I think it just adds to our story. We're a family operated business. We're very much involved in that. It's part of who we are. It's like part of our values that we're family run. We believe in small town, you know, everyone taking care of each other. It's kind of who we are. So we often, you know, we post about it because that's who we are. And, you know, people that feel the same way will appreciate that. So again, the human element is really important, but don't be afraid to share people that are part of your business, you know, whether it's your son or your daughter or your, you know, your grandfather or whatever, cousin. It's just really important to bring family in and share about it because people love to see it. So that's why I posted this. And it was his birthday, so yeah.
I'm glad you're letting him slowly retire at 89.
You know, yeah. He's kind of starting step away, but he's still involved. But he's kind of, I don't blame him. He's ready to retire.
Yeah.
And this is just a little, I just wanted to show a little snapshot of our Instagram page, if anyone follows us. So there's kind of a mix. There's a mix of, the human element. You can see me in there. There's some hands in there. And I keep talking about that because it is so important for a really interactive Instagram marketing plan. Also, there's lots of recipes. There's product shots. There's, a little bit of illustrations. We had a company that we are contracting to do some illustrations. As you can see, the beer has a little, illustration of it, which is kind of cute. And it just kind of plays into your brand and what you stand for and the feel you want to give. Are you playful? Are you serious? Are you fun loving? Are you, like what kind of vibe do you want to give people? And this is just kind of gives you a little snapshot of, who we are. And, some people will go for it and some people won't. And that's okay. Like, it's just, you want to kind of just show people who you are on your social media pages.
All right. And there's a question there, and I think it might be a good time to just take a look at it. So the question is, how much time do you spend on the blog? Mm-hmm. And maybe I'll put blog/social media. Mm. And how do you measure your results?
Oh, that's a good question. So I do the social media myself. I don't do the photography myself, but I do the social media myself. And I write the blogs myself, but I don't post them. So I would say per week, I pre-schedule all my content. So I would say per week, I spend 8 hours.
Wow.
It's a lot. And it's, no, I'd say 8 hours max, like a little bit each day. Mm-hmm. It's a lot, but it's really how we generate business, I feel. It's our main marketing avenue. So I do an hour in the evening when I'm not really working. So I'm laying on the couch and maybe I'm scheduling a few posts. So it's kind of sporadic throughout the week, but I think it would total up to about 8 hours. And in terms of measuring it, I think it's important to measure your engagement. So on social media, if you have a business page, you can go to insights and you can measure, you can see the comments, you can see the saves, which is also really important. You can see the comments and the likes, and also if people are sending it to other people. And I think that you'll start to realize and take note of which posts you get a lot of engagement. So are people saving that post a lot? Are they liking a lot of it? Are you getting a lot of comments? You'll start to realize what's getting a lot of action from people and what isn't. So, and then that's kind of how I measure it. So then when you see that, like, oh, people love, like, oh, like the post I made of Grandpa, wow, like 600 likes and like 30 comments. Wow, people really like that. Or, the one of me holding the award, we got a ton of likes and a lot of comments. People really like that. So it just goes to show how the human engagement is really important. We find that when we post the actual recipe in the post, where we have a caption, then we have the recipe, people save that a lot, and that's really good too. You want people to save that recipe to go back to later, so that's good too. So I'd say that if you're not sure about how your posts are registering with people, just check the insights and just see, likes, comments, saves, and you'll see what's working and what's not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's important. And one point that you made there, which I use in SKUFood as well, is pre-planning a lot of this, so that every week you're not going, oh man, what are we going to talk about now? Yes. You're looking further out and planning and trying to pick on some themes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That helps make it easier for you.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a few different tools you can use. I use a couple different programming apps. There's one called Planoly, and there's one called Later. And I use both of them for different reasons, but they're really great to pre-schedule your content, choose a time, so you don't necessarily need to be at your phone at all time. However, I will say that it is good to be answering comments from people, if because often people have questions or they make a comment, and there's nothing better than when a company replies to your comment. It's better for your engagement, and it will work for you. So even though you will schedule your content ahead of time, don't go too far the first hour that you post something, and make sure you're replying to people, whether you're liking their comment, replying to them, saying, say for example, somebody says, oh, this recipe looks great. Just say something back super simple, like, yes, it really is. And I can't even tell you how far that goes, because if a customer comments and they see the company replies, they think, wow, I mean something to them. And that goes a long ways. And it does really good things for your engagement. I could talk a lot about social media. So, but I will say, if take anything away, pre-schedule your content and make sure you're responding to people as best you can. Just, communicate with them. People love that.
That's right. And in June, we did a series on internet marketing, and Brent Martell, who joined us one day, said pretty much that, is that if you're going to be on social media, you have to be prepared for the conversation, and don't go on there if you think it's only going to be one way, you pushing things out.
100%. Yeah. And that's when people lose faith and lose trust in the brand. Like if they have an example, like for example, like, you post a picture of a recipe, somebody would say, is this mustard gluten-free? And then if you don't respond to them, then they'll go with a question unanswered. But if you respond to them, they feel valued. They feel like, you respect their question. And so it is really important. So it does take work. And that's why a lot of people do contract out their social media and they get somebody else to do it for them. It can be expensive, but it can be worth it if you just don't have the time to be there and engaging with your customers. But it is very important.
Right. And I would, before I move to the next slide, I just would encourage people. I see right at the bottom where it is the salad piece that you did. And we both, in our house, we both read that one and took away some awesome tips. So if you get to the Maritimes, we'll make salad for you, Carly. You might recognize some of it. So.
Yeah, I loved writing that one because salads can be boring, but salads can also be fun. So
yeah. So here's another example.
Yeah, so this is just like our most recent kind of snapshot. And it kind of just shows you a little variety. Again, lots of human element. I'll say that again, human element is really important. And that's something that we are starting to include more and more. Recipes, and I think that it's hard. Like, I think people think, oh, you know what, your feed has to have a perfectly cohesive color to it, look to it. It does to a certain extent, but as you can see, mine's not perfect. You can have a little bit of fun and deviating, but try and make it look somewhat, match. You want to make sure it's pleasing to the eye, so people don't go to your page and go, oh, like there's just so much distraction. There is something called presets out there. If you do take photos with your iPhone, you can get a filter that you can purchase. It's called a preset. You can Google it and you'll get lots of options. They're cheap to buy. And basically what it is, it's like a filter that you put over photos in Lightroom, which is an app, and it makes it look very cohesive. So all your photos will have a similar feel. Hopefully that maybe helps some people, because that way, so all these photos are pretty much professionally taken. Again, I can't take credit for it, but if you do want to take photos yourself, it's a great way to use your iPhone and add a nice filter to it, and then it looks like a professionally taken photo.
Interesting. I might have to start taking pictures of me like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, and this is our recipe page. So as you can imagine, being a product that talks about versatility, and in the kitchen and cooking, we have a huge array of recipes. So this is just a little snapshot of our recipe page, categorized into different categories, so people can be specific in what they're looking for. We've invested a lot into different recipes, and it's, the one thing I will say is content can be expensive to invest in up front, but it's something you can utilize for years if it's done properly. And if you get it done well, you can use content and photos for many years down the road. So some of these photos are a couple years old, but you wouldn't know because they're freshened up with new fonts, and you can use them for a long time.
That's true. And yeah, reusing content is a good holiday recipe can be used every year, once a year, right? So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And and the thing is that, like, if you have a recipe that you shot, when you first started the business, but then 5 years later, you have so many new followers that they've never seen that recipe. So why not put it out there again? So, and even people that have seen it, it reminds them again. So don't be afraid to recycle old content if it makes sense and if it looks good. So, yeah.
And one thing I see in you doing that helps you tell your story is you have a seasonal product, right? Which you bring out in the fall.
Yeah.
And then also, I think I saw another one that was like a wasabi that was like a sort of you were using more of the scarcity kind of, we're only making so many jars, you better get it while you can kind of thing. But
Yeah.
Both of those kind of things help you tell your story as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think the exclusive products are kind of fun to throw in the mix because it just kind of adds like an urgency, especially when you don't have the liberty to, or the flexibility to bring out new flavors all the time that, stay on board. Bringing out exclusive products that you only have online, or, that are only sold, and, you have to be careful about only sold in, specific stores, but yeah, it adds fun to your brand and it keeps people kind of on their toes and wondering what you're going to do next. So it is something interesting to dabble in if you do want to bring out something new but can't offer it to everyone. People respect it. And then I often just use, if people ever ask me, oh, can I get this for the stores? Just tell them that you're just testing it in the market, and then, and then you'll launch it into stores, if the results are positive. And that way you can launch it and you can get good feedback from it. And maybe it is one that you'll want to bring on permanently later, or maybe it's one that's just for fun, that's only for a small market. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just, oh yeah, this is our blog. This is our blog. So just some, great ways to add value to people. So 12 ideas for the best backyard cookout, the salad blog, and then that's I'm holding my niece there, what to cook with kids. We interviewed a local food blogger who I really love, and she did a little Q&A with her. She just came out with a cookbook. So there's different things you can do, and you can be creative in your business. Like maybe you interview one of your employees and post about it. I don't know. There's a lot of fun ways you can add, add value, add some interest. And then it also just makes people feel more connected to your brand. They read that and they feel, wow, I just feel like I have a little bit more maybe in common with them, or you just feel more connected, and that's when you really build customers for life. So again, it's all about providing value. So blogs are a really great way to do that.
So to tell your story, you're using your blog, which you do, if I look here, it's about maybe once or twice a month. And you're doing Instagram?
Yes.
Facebook?
Yes.
Pinterest or not?
Yeah, we do a little bit of Pinterest. Pinterest is a big market. Like it requires a lot of, we're dabbling in. I think we'll probably do a little bit more, but it is a big, it's such a big platform that there's just so much. You have to be really specific. So we're going to dive into it, but we do have a Pinterest page. Yes. All of our recipes are on the Pinterest page. And
also I see on LinkedIn too, right?
Yeah. And I will say again that LinkedIn is a really good one too, because I think that people forget that, I know I felt this way for a long time, and I don't know why, but I think that people sometimes think that your professional career is different than, people that buy in the stores, but it's not, the people that you interact with on LinkedIn are also your consumers. So it's really important to engage in there as well. If anything, it's more of a business and more of a professional environment, that they're maybe more in tune to buy your product if you're a local high-end product. So I really encourage, if you have a business, to really pivot to LinkedIn too, and post your blogs, post articles, do some engagement there as well, because those people will also be your consumers, just like any other social media platform. And I don't know why it took me so long to really realize that, but it really is a great avenue as well. So yeah.
And one of the points, again, I go back to our session that Brent did in June, because when you're posting on LinkedIn about what you're doing, your customers are seeing it, and I agree they may be potential consumers in the store, but they also say, wow, look at the work that Smak Dab and that Carly is doing to drive people into our store, to drive volume, to grow the category, all those things that you told them you were going to do for them. And they see it and they go, wow, okay, I get it. She's doing what she told us she would do.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's exactly it. It really allows you to connect more with your customers on LinkedIn versus your social media pages. They might be there too, but that's a really good point. Yeah.
And my last question for you before I switch and just share a few good news stories that we found this week is, so you're doing a lot of these things, and how do you figure out, what's affordable, how much you can invest in this part of your business? Because I think that's a big challenge for people, is to try to figure what's either a percentage, or how do you kind of take a look at that in your business?
Yeah, so I think that every business is different. So I think that, some businesses based on, your margin or your revenue, some businesses will have, a bit of marketing dollars to spend and some won't. It's very situational. And so for us personally, I think we like to allot 10 to 15% for marketing. And I think that it's a trial and error thing, I hate to say, unfortunately. Like, you'll try some things, you'll say, well, that didn't work, and you'll have to, backpedal. But it's a tough question, but I would say 10 to 15% for us is what we usually allot. But every business will be different, and every business the needs will be different. So, maybe you're a business that will not require recipes, so you will not need to put out as much content as we have invested in, but maybe videos will be a better avenue, and telling your brand story and, talking about your values and your mission statement, and maybe that's going to be more important for your marketing. I think that every business will be different, and I think it's just like listening to your gut. I do reference that a lot, because I think that you don't know, you know your business better than everyone. You know what you need to do, and it's just important for you to follow that. And if something's not working, don't do it. And if you really feel like you want to grow an area of your business, it does take investment, but trust it, And I don't think it hurts to get some different opinions as well of people that you do trust in what you should invest in. I know marketing, we talked about this, Peter, it can be expensive and it can be tricky, because you can feel like you're just being taken for a ride, but it is really important. And it is really important to put dollars into building your brand. And so people understand your value and what you stand for. But it can be a bit of trial and error. So
yeah. And I think that your number, I was thinking about this when you were talking about 10 to 15%, but then I think it's also important to layer on top that a lot of it, you are doing a lot of it yourself. And
exactly.
That's not an expense out of pocket, but it's an investment in the resource that you have within your business, which is you. And if it's 8 hours a week, then that's something that, if someone's going to have to go out for more, because you can do a lot of recipe development yourself and that kind of thing. So just to kind of layer that on top for people, I guess, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, totally agree.
all right. So I don't see any questions, but if people do, you can type them into the chat. And I just want to finish, as I do each week, with some good news in the food industry. It has been such a challenging time that we try to look for some good news stories. And this is one we found from London, Ontario, where a local business called Furat's Chocolates, they got their supplier, Calabo, to donate 1 ton of chocolate. And what they did was they turned that into fantastic, tasty treats, and they sold them and donated all the profits to the food bank in London. So instead of just giving something away, they turned it into some great products, sold it, and they were able to feed 500 families non-perishable food products for a month, which is a great thing. And as we see the industry changing and people kind of coming out of the whole, the economy starting to change, I think we're seeing a lot of businesses, especially in food service, who are really trying to adapt. And we're seeing more examples like this, where food service, like the OHS Hospitality Group, have opened this door-to-door fresh, where they're delivering some of the products they would use in their restaurants, the ingredients to door-to-door to consumers, and also prepared foods. So I think for people that there are new opportunities coming out of this whole thing as people rethink their business and really try to take a look at it. And then the last good news one, which this one came from Canadian Grocer, and I knew this was coming up, so I was kind of laughing when we were talking about it earlier as being a source of information, because I used it as a source. But one of the articles was just about the fact that we're going to see a lot of development in functional foods to help boost immune systems with this whole pandemic, that consumers are really starting to think, wow, I really need to make this part of my diet. And what are some of the functional foods that I should be including? And they reference some, I know in the article, Shelley Belanco, who was actually at our CART event in 2018 from the Hartman Group, is quoted with a number of categories that they see as having exponential growth in the next few months, with specialty items like mushrooms and some other products that boost immune. So I think you're going to see a lot of demand for products like that. So if you have some in the works, I would encourage you to keep working on that. Maybe, Carly, you need a functional mustard that's got some of these immunity boosting characteristics in it. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So I want to just say thank you so much to you, Carly, for taking the time to spend the hour with us today. I always say it's the fastest hour of the week for me. It goes by so quick, and all the great information. I know I was scribbling notes, and I'm sure the people on were as well. And I can always tell we get a lot of questions that people are definitely really interested in the information you were sharing. So thank you so much, and I look forward to continue watching Smak Dab grow and keep getting into new places in Canada.
Yeah, for sure. No, thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right, and always appreciate your insights, and would always want to encourage everybody to join us next week. We've got Danny Duguay, who's a chef here in Halifax, who's going to join us for our Recipe for Success, which is presented by FCC, and Danny's going to share some insights into working with influencers, and she does a lot of that work in her own business, and she's also just opened a restaurant in the middle of this pandemic. So I'm really looking forward to having Danny join us. So we look forward to seeing you then. And if you have anything in the meantime, you can always reach out to me. It's peter@skufood.com. Thanks for being here with us.